If you asked me to pinpoint the exact moment my life derailed, or more accurately, the moment I decided to purposefully derail it, it wasn't when the police showed up. It wasn't when I wired a military-grade amplifier into my wheel well. It wasn't even the HOA hearing where a grown man named Gary wept openly into a lukewarm cup of coffee. No, it was a Tuesday. A mundane, beige, humid Tuesday in mid-July. I was sitting in my car, a midnight silver metallic Tesla Model Y, staring at my garage door. The air conditioning was humming its soft, apologetic song, trying to combat the 90-degree soup of a Pennsylvania summer. Inside the cabin, it was a crisp 68 degrees. Outside, it was a steam bath. And standing between me and the sanctuary of my climate-controlled home was Brenda. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand the rage, the specific, distilled vintage of white-hot annoyance that leads a man to purchase train horns, you have to understand the environment. You have to understand Maple Ridge Estates. Maple Ridge is one of those suburban developments that looks like it was 3D printed by an alien civilization that had only seen blurry photographs of the American dream. It's a place where the grass is legally mandated to be between 2 and 3 inches high. Not 1, not 4, 2 to 3. It's a place where mailboxes must be painted harvest beige or sandstone whisper, colors that are indistinguishable to the human eye but legally distinct in the bylaws. It is quiet. It is safe. It is the kind of place where people move to die slowly of boredom while worrying about their property values. I moved here 3 years ago. I'm Mike. I work in tech, specifically in user experience optimization, which is a fancy way of saying I spend 40 hours a week arguing with clients about why their websites shouldn't flash red and yellow like a seizure-inducing disco. I like quiet. I like efficiency. I like things to work. That's why I bought the Tesla. It's efficient. It's quiet. It's a computer on wheels. Or at least it was quiet. Until the government got involved. See, electric cars used to be silent assassins. They would glide through parking lots like ninjas, sneaking up on unsuspecting pedestrians. So the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA, in their infinite wisdom, mandated the Pedestrian Warning System, PWS. Now, whenever an EV travels below 19 miles per hour or reverses, it has to make a noise. Elon Musk, being Elon Musk, Farban, didn't choose a simple beep. He didn't choose a standard engine rumble. No. He chose a sound that can only be described as a UFO trying to beam up a cow. It's a modulating sci-fi whoom that radiates from a speaker under the front bumper. Inside the car, with the windows up and the radio on, you barely hear it. It's a background hum. Outside the car? Well, apparently, it's the sound of the apocalypse. I had just pulled into the cul-de-sac after a 10-hour shift. My brain felt like it had been run through a cheese grater. I had spent 3 hours in a Zoom call with a client who wanted to know if we could make the logo pop more by adding a sound effect of a cork popping every time someone clicked a link. I was done. I was depleted. I just wanted to park, go inside, and stare at a wall until my serotonin levels regenerated. I swung the car wide to back into my driveway. I shifted into reverse. The screen flickered to the backup camera view. The PWS engaged. Whoom, it began its futuristic chant. I eased off the brake. The car crept backward. I was watching the yellow guidelines on the screen, lining up perfectly with the expansion joints in the concrete. I was halfway up the drive, almost home, almost safe. Then, the proximity sensors went haywire. Beep, 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 the screen flashed red. An obstacle was detected on the driver's side. I slammed on the brakes. My heart jumped into my throat. Had I hit a kid, a dog, a rogue delivery robot? I looked at the side mirror. It wasn't a dog. It was worse. It was Brenda. Brenda lived directly across the street at 402. In the taxonomy of suburban wildlife, Brenda is an apex predator. She is a woman in her late 50s, with a bob haircut so sharp it could cut glass, and a wardrobe consisting entirely of floral print tunics and sensible walking shoes. She doesn't have hobbies. She has grievances. She doesn't have friends. She has co-conspirators. She is the self-appointed guardian of the neighborhood's moral and auditory purity. She was standing 2 inches from my driver's side door, her face pressed near the glass, her mouth moving rapidly. I sighed. A long, heavy sigh that fogged up the inside of my soul. I didn't move. I just sat there in the driveway, half in and half out, the car still in reverse, the whoom sound gently pulsing into the summer air. She slapped the window. Thump, thump, thump. I closed my eyes for a second, praying for a sinkhole to open up and swallow the entire cul-de-sac. When no geological intervention occurred, I pressed the button to lower the window. I didn't lower it all the way. I lowered it 4 inches. Just enough to hear, but not enough to allow physical entry. A tactical gap. "Can I help you, Brenda?" I asked. I tried to keep my voice neutral, but the exhaustion leaked through. "You need to turn that off," Brenda screamed. Her voice wasn't just loud, it was piercing. It had a frequency that resonated in your teeth. "Turn what off, Brenda?" "That engine, that noise, you're revving it." She pointed an accusatory finger at the dashboard. "You're sitting there revving your engine at me. It's aggressive, Mike, it's menacing." I stared at her. I looked at the steering wheel. I looked back at her. "Brenda," I said slowly, as if explaining quantum physics to a golden retriever. "It's an electric car. It doesn't have an engine, it cannot rev. It physically cannot make the sound of an engine revving because there are no pistons firing." "Don't you get smart with me," she snapped, her face flushing a blotchy pink. "I have ears, Mike. I know what I hear. It's a high-pitched whine. It's unnatural. It sounds like a dentist drill burrowing into my brain." "It's the safety sound," I said, reciting the script I had used twice before. "It's the pedestrian warning system. It's federally mandated. The car makes that noise so blind people don't walk behind it and get run over. If I stop moving, the sound stops." "It's too loud," she shrieked. She leaned closer to the gap in the window. I could smell her perfume. It smelled like lavender and litigation. "My ears are sensitive. I have tinnitus. That frequency sets it off. It's like you're stabbing me in the eardrum." "I can't change it, Brenda. It's factory standard." "You're lying." She stepped back, putting her hands on her hips, striking a pose of supreme indignation. "I looked it up. You can change settings on these computers. You turned it up. You modified it to annoy me because I reported your trash bin last week." Ah, the trash bin. The previous week's skirmish. I had left my bin out until 6:15 p.m. The bylaws stated they must be stored by 6 p.m. She had sent a photo to the HOA board, timestamped 6:12 p.m. I had received a $50 fine. "This has nothing to do with the trash bin," I lied. It had a little to do with the trash bin, in the sense that I now loathed her with the fire of 1,000 suns. But the car noise was coincidental. "I am trying to park. If you step away from the car, I can finish backing up. Once the car is in park, the noise stops. It is a problem with a 5-second solution." "I'm not moving until you disable it," she declared, planting her feet on my asphalt. She was now effectively holding my driveway hostage. "You want me to disable a federal safety feature?" "I want you to stop assaulting the neighborhood with that screeching." "It's a hum, Brenda. A warble at best." "It's torture." She waved her hands at the surrounding houses, all of which had their blinds drawn tight. "Everyone hates it. We talk about it. We're all sick of your spaceship noises. Why can't you drive a normal car? Why can't you drive a Buick?" "Because I like not paying for gas," I said, my patience fraying like a rope holding a grand piano. "Brenda, please move. I am tired. I want to go inside." "You are standing in a blind spot. If my foot slips off the brake, the car will move, and the safety system you hate so much will be the only thing alerting you to move." "Is that a threat?" Her eyes went wide. She gasped, a theatrical intake of air. "Did you hear that? He threatened to run me over." She was shouting at nobody. There was no one else there. Just me, Brenda, and a squirrel watching from the oak tree. "I did not threaten you. I explained the physics of a 2-ton vehicle." "I'm going to the board," she yelled, pointing that talon-like finger again. "I'm reporting this. Excessive noise, unauthorized modification, aggressive driving. I'll have you fined into bankruptcy, Mike. You hear me? Bankruptcy." "Go ahead, Brenda," I said, giving up. "Tell Gary I said hello." I pressed the button to roll the window up. "I'm not done." The glass sealed shut, muffling her voice into a dull, angry murmur. I could still see her mouth moving, shaping words like violations and lawsuit and disrespect. I took my foot off the brake. Woom. The sound returned, vibrating through the chassis. Brenda flinched as if I had fired a gun. She clapped her hands over her ears, squinting her eyes shut, and scrambled backward onto the grass, acting as though the low-volume electronic hum was a physical shockwave pushing her away. It was a performance, a grotesque, over-the-top pantomime of victimhood. I backed the car into the garage. I watched her in the backup camera until the garage door frame cut off the view. I put the car in park. The sound died instantly. I sat there in the silence of the garage. The motion-activated overhead lights flickered on. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. My heart was pounding. Not from fear, but from adrenaline. The fight-or-flight response was screaming at me to do something, to yell back, to throw something, to engage. But I didn't. I just sat there. Unbelievable, I whispered to the empty garage. She genuinely believed I was doing it on purpose. She believed the world revolved around her auditory comfort. She believed that a global car manufacturer designed a safety feature specifically to irritate a retiree in Pennsylvania. I got out of the car and plugged in the charger. The port locked with a satisfying mechanical clunk. I walked into my kitchen and opened the fridge. I grabbed a beer. I didn't even want it, but it felt like the required prop for the scene. I walked to the front window, the one with the slat blinds, and peered out. Brenda was still there. She was standing at the edge of my driveway, typing furiously on her phone. She was probably emailing Gary, or the police, or the Navy SEALs. She looked up at my house, her eyes scanning the windows. I pulled back, lurking in the shadows like a criminal in my own home. She eventually turned and marched back across the street to number 402, her floral tunic flapping in the wind, a warrior returning to her fortress. I took a sip of the beer. It was cold, but it tasted like ash. I thought that was it. I thought it was just another Tuesday tantrum. I thought she'd vent on the Nextdoor app, get a few sympathy likes from the other neighborhood grumps, and move on to complaining about someone's mulch color. I was wrong. 2 days later, the letter arrived. It was on thick, cream-colored paper. The official stationery of the Maple Ridge Homeowners Association. It was taped to my front door. Notice of violation. Re 404 Maple Drive violation, Article 4, Section 2, noise, and Article 9, Section 1, unapproved mechanical modifications. I stood on my porch, reading the letter. The sun was shining, birds were singing, and I was reading a formal accusation that I had illegally modified a vehicle to emit distress frequencies. I looked across the street. The blinds at 402 twitched. She was watching. I felt something snap inside me. It was a quiet snap, like a dry twig stepping on a forest floor. It wasn't a sudden explosion of anger. It was a cold, crystallizing realization. She wanted a war about noise? She wanted to drag me into the mud over decibels? She accused me of modification? Fine, I thought, staring at the twitching blinds across the street. If you want a modification, Brenda, I'll give you a modification. I folded the letter and put it in my pocket. I didn't tear it up, I needed it. It was my permission slip, the game was on. To fully appreciate the madness of what I was about to do, to understand why a grown man with a 401k and a low resting heart rate would decide to turn his vehicle into a sonic weapon. You have to understand the history. You have to understand that the Tesla incident wasn't an isolated skirmish. It was the latest offensive in a war of attrition that had been raging since the day I moved in. Brenda isn't just a neighbor. She is a force of nature. She is to suburban joy what a black hole is to light. She consumes it, crushes it, and ensures that nothing escapes her event horizon without a citation. Before we get to the meeting that changed everything, let me open the archives. Let me take you through the Brenda highlight reel. Exhibit A, the trash can incident. It happened 6 months ago, November, a Tuesday. The wind was biting, the kind that cuts right through your jacket, and I was rushing home from work. The garbage truck usually comes at noon, but in our neighborhood, the receptacle retrieval protocol, Section 8.4 of the bylaws, is sacred text. Bins must be returned to their concealed storage areas, that is, the garage or behind a specifically approved lattice fence, by 6 p.m. on pickup day. I pulled into my driveway at 6:15 p.m. Traffic had been a nightmare. There was a jackknifed tractor trailer on I-95. I was tired, hungry, and dreaming of leftover lasagna. As my headlights swept across the front of my house, I saw them. The bins, still sitting at the curb, empty, lonely, and technically illegal. I hopped out of the car, leaving the engine running. This was pre-Tesla, back when I had a perfectly normal gas-guzzling Jeep that Brenda also hated because it looked too rugged for a residential zone. I jogged to the curb. And there she was. Brenda emerged from the shadows of her porch like a vampire, sensing a drop of blood. She was holding a flashlight, not a phone light, a heavy-duty police-issue mag light. She shone it directly into my face. "Evening, Brenda," I called out, shielding my eyes. "Just grabbing the cans." "Check your watch, Mike," she barked from the darkness. I know, I said, grabbing the handle of the recycling bin. Traffic was gridlock. Better late than never, right? "Wrong," she said. She walked down her driveway, the beam of light bobbing. She stopped at the edge of the road. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a tape measure. I froze. "Brenda, what are you doing?" "Documenting," she said. She extended the tape measure from the curb to the wheel of my bin. Then she checked her watch. Then she took a photo with her phone. Flash on, click. "It is 6:16 p.m., she announced, like a coroner declaring time of death. "You are 16 minutes past the retrieval window. This creates a visual blight. It lowers the aesthetic value of the street. It invites vermin." "It's 16 minutes, Brenda. The vermin haven't had time to RSVP yet." "Slippery slope, Mike," she said, retracting the tape measure with a sharp snap. "First it's 16 minutes. Then it's an hour. Then people leave them out overnight. Then we're living in a shanty town. Rules exist for a reason. Civilizations fall when standards erode." "I think Rome fell for different reasons than garbage can placement," I muttered, dragging the bins up the drive. "I heard that," she yelled. "Attitude is also a violation of the community spirit clause." 3 days later, I received a fine for $50. Attached to the invoice was the photo she took. She had circled the timestamp in red marker. Underneath, she had written, "Compliance is not optional." Exhibit B, the BBQ fiasco. If the trash can incident was a misdemeanor, the BBQ fiasco was a felony. It was July, specifically the 4th of July weekend. I had recently invested in a high-end offset smoker. I'm talking heavy-gauge steel, shocking price tag, the kind of equipment that requires a degree in thermodynamics to operate. I wanted to make brisket, real Texas-style brisket. I woke up at 3:30 a.m. to start the fire. I used aged oak and a little bit of cherry wood. By noon, the meat had been smoking for 9 hours. It was hitting the stall. I was monitoring the internal temperature with the focus of a bomb squad technician. The smoke coming from my backyard was thin, blue, and wispy. It was clean smoke. It smelled like victory. It smelled like freedom. I was in the kitchen making a mop sauce when I heard it. Sirens. Not the distant wail of a police car on the highway. I mean the earth-shaking, window-rattling horn of a heavy fire apparatus turning into my street. I looked out the window. A ladder truck, Ladder 42, was braking hard in front of my house. A pumper truck was right behind it. Firefighters in full turnout gear were jumping off the rig, axes in hand. My heart stopped. I smelled smoke, my smoke, and panic set in. Did an ember escape? Is the roof on fire? I ran out the front door, apron flapping in the wind, holding a pair of tongs like a weapon. "Where's the fire?" I shouted at the captain, a giant man who looked like he ate concrete for breakfast. "Evacuate the structure!" he bellowed, pointing at my house. "We have a report of heavy black smoke and the smell of burning toxic chemicals." "What?" I looked at my house. "There's no black smoke. I'm cooking brisket." The captain paused. He looked at the roof. No flames. He looked at the windows. No smoke. He sniffed the air. He smelled the sweet, savory aroma of rendered fat and oak wood. He lowered his axe. "Brisket?" "Yes. It's in the backyard. It's at 165 degrees internal. It's hitting the stall. Dispatch said the caller reported a chemical structure fire and difficulty breathing due to toxic plume. The captain walked to the backyard with me. He looked at the smoker. He saw the thin blue wisp coming from the stack. He looked at the thermometer. "That's a nice rig," he said. "Thanks," I exhaled, my adrenaline crashing. Is this illegal?" "Cooking dinner? No," he said. He keyed his radio. "Dispatch, ladder 42, false alarm at the address. Resident is operating a BBQ grill, no hazard, cancel the box." He looked at me. "Who called it in?" I pointed a tong across the street. The blinds at 402 were shut tight, but I saw a shadow move. "Figures," the captain sighed. "We get a lot of calls from this neighborhood. Usually about suspicious-looking teenagers who turn out to be the paper boy." "I'm sorry you guys came all this way," I said. "Save me a slice?" the captain joked. He patted me on the shoulder and led his team away. I didn't get a fine for that one. But the next day, Brenda posted on the neighborhood Facebook group. "Some residents seem to think it's acceptable to turn our air quality into a smog alert. People with asthma have rights too. Smoked meats belong in commercial zones, not family neighborhoods." So, when I received the letter about the Tesla, I wasn't just annoyed. I was primed. I was a man who had been poked, prodded, measured, and falsely accused of arson. The reservoir of my patience was dry. All that was left was a muddy pit of spite. So the meeting. The Maple Ridge Community Center is a soulless brick building that smells of floor wax, stale donuts, and broken dreams. This is where the HOA board meets on the first Thursday of every month to decide the fate of our mailboxes and mulch. I walked in at 7 p.m. sharp. I was armed. Not with weapons, but with data. I had the Tesla owner's manual. I had the NHTSA safety regulations printed out. I had a decibel chart. The room was lit by flickering fluorescent tubes that gave everyone a sickly greenish pallor. At the front of the room sat the board. In the center was Gary. Poor Gary. He was the president, a title he held only because nobody else wanted it. Gary was a man who looked like he was slowly eroding. He had slumped shoulders, sad eyes, and a comb-over that had given up the ghost years ago. He looked like a golden retriever that had been kicked too many times. To his right sat Brenda. She wasn't technically on the board, but she was the community standards liaison, a position she had invented and forced Gary to recognize. She had her binder. A 3-ring binder, color-coded, thick enough to stop a bullet. There were 2 other board members. Linda, who knitted through every meeting, and Bob, who was asleep with his eyes open, but they didn't matter. This was a gladiatorial match between me and the liaison. "All right," Gary sighed, tapping a plastic gavel on the folding table. It made a pathetic thwack sound. "Let's get this over with. Item 4, Mike, the car noise." "Thank you, Gary," I said, stepping up to the podium. I placed my stack of papers down with a heavy thud. "I am here to appeal the violation notice regarding the so-called unauthorized modification of my vehicle." Brenda didn't wait for me to finish. She shot up from her chair like a jack-in-the-box. "It's not so-called," she snapped. "I heard it. We all heard it. It's a screech. It's a mechanical wail. It sounds like a dying robot." "Brenda, please," Gary murmured, rubbing his temples. "Let him speak." "I have not modified the car," I said, holding up the owner's manual. Page 142, pedestrian warning system. The vehicle will emit a sound when traveling below 19 miles per hour or in reverse to alert pedestrians. It is a safety feature. It is hardwired. It cannot be disabled. "Lies," Brenda hissed. She opened her binder. She flipped to a tab marked with a red sticker. "I did research. I went on the internet. There are hackers. People hack these cars to play music, to play sound effects. You can make it sound like a fart. You can make it sound like a goat." "I haven't made it sound like a goat, Brenda. It sounds like a hum." "It's the pitch." She tapped her ear. "I have hypersensitive auditory reception. My doctor says I perceive frequencies other people miss. It's a disability, Mike, and you are exploiting it. You found the one frequency that triggers my migraines and you turned it up." "I didn't tune the car to your migraines," I argued, my voice rising. I don't have a knob for Brenda's headaches on my dashboard. It's a stock sound. It's menacing, she continued, ignoring me. He looked at me when he did it. He made eye contact. He reversed, locked eyes with me, and blasted that death ray of sound. It was an act of aggression, Gary. It's assault via audio. Gary looked at me. He looked miserable. Mike, is it really loud? Gary, it's quieter than your lawnmower. It's quieter than the wind in the trees. It's barely audible from 20 feet away. I have recordings, Brenda shouted. She pulled out her phone. She hit play. We all leaned in. Static. Wind noise. A bird chirping. Then, very faintly, in the background, "Whoom." "See?" she screamed triumphantly. "Did you hear that? It's piercing." The room was silent. Bob, the sleeping board member, snored softly. "Brenda," I said, "that sounded like a microwave running in the next room." "It's the recording quality," she defended. "In person, it shakes your bones." Gary sighed again. He looked at the clock. He looked at his coffee. He looked at me. He signaled for me to approach the table. I walked up. Brenda leaned back, crossing her arms, looking smug. Gary leaned in, lowering his voice to a whisper. "Mike, look, I know." "You know?" I whispered back. "I know she's crazy," he murmured, his eyes darting to Brenda to make sure she wasn't reading his lips. "My nephew has a Model 3. I've ridden in it. The sound is fine. I actually kind of like it. Sounds like Star Trek." "So dismiss the violation," I said. "I can't," Gary groaned. "She's cited the quiet enjoyment clause. She's threatening to sue the HOA for negligence if we don't enforce the noise ordinance. She has a lawyer, Mike, a real one, not a strip mall lawyer. If she sues, our insurance premiums go up. If premiums go up, dues go up. If dues go up, the whole neighborhood riots, and they burn my house down." "So what do you want me to do?" I asked, incredulous. "You want me to sell the car?" "No," Gary said. "I just want you to fix it." "Fix what? There's nothing broken." "Just do something," Gary pleaded. His eyes were wet. He looked like a man on the edge of a nervous breakdown. "Change the sound, muffle it. Put a pillow over the speaker, I don't care. Just do something that makes her feel like she won. So she stops emailing me at 3 a.m. Do you know how many emails I have? Hundreds. She attaches PDFs, Mike. PDFs of noise pollution studies." I looked at Gary. I felt a pang of pity. He was a hostage. We were all hostages. Then I looked at Brenda. She was watching us whisper. She had a self-satisfied smirk plastered across her face. She was tapping her pen against her binder. Tap, tap, tap. She thought she had me. She thought that by being the loudest, most obnoxious squeaky wheel, she would get the grease. She thought I would cower. She thought I would go home, wrap my car in bubble wrap, and apologize for existing. "You want me to change the sound?" I asked Gary, my voice hardening. "Yes," Gary said. "Please, just make it different. Make it so she can't complain about that specific whine anymore." A gear turned in my head. A heavy, rusted gear that hadn't moved since the BBQ incident. She complained about the whine. She complained about the pitch. She said it was menacing. She said it was unauthorized modification. If I did nothing, she would keep fining me. If I tried to muffle it, I'd be unsafe. But Gary just gave me an order. Change the sound. Make it different. Technically, if I changed the sound, I was complying with the HOA board's request. I looked at Brenda again. "You think it's too quiet to be safe?" "Don't you, Brenda?" I asked loudly. "I never said it was too quiet," she snapped. "I said it was annoying. But yes, if you're going to have a noise, it should be a recognizable vehicle noise, not a spaceship. It confuses the elderly. We expect a car to sound like a car." "A recognizable vehicle noise," I repeated. "Something distinct. Something that clearly signals danger, keep back." "Exactly," Brenda said, thinking she had made a breakthrough. "Something that commands respect." I turned back to Gary. "Gary, if I modify the sound to be more distinct, and to remove the specific frequency Brenda dislikes, will that satisfy the board?" Gary shrugged, desperate for any solution. "Sure, yeah. Just make the problem go away, Mike." "Consider it done," I said. I gathered my papers. I didn't look at Brenda as I walked out. I didn't want her to see the look in my eyes. It wasn't anger anymore. It was cold, calculated purpose. She wanted a recognizable vehicle noise. She wanted something that commands respect. She wanted to be warned. I walked out into the cool evening air. My Tesla was sitting in the parking lot. It looked sleek, innocent. "Don't worry, buddy," I patted the hood. "We're going to get you a voice. A big, loud voice." I got in the car. I didn't go home. I drove to the one place where bad ideas become reality, the internet cafe. Just kidding. I went home to my high-speed fiber connection. I sat down at my desk and typed 3 words into the search bar. Tesla boombox unlock. I found the forums. I found the modders. And then I found the address for Bass and Hertz. Brenda had accused me of unauthorized modification. She had accused me of psychological warfare. She had dragged me before the tribunal of Gary. She wanted a war. She was going to get a symphony. I went to sleep that night with a smile on my face. The kind of smile the Grinch had right before he stole Christmas. Saturday morning in Maple Ridge Estates is usually a sacred time. It is the ceasefire. It is the demilitarized zone of the week where the lawnmowers haven't started yet, the leaf blowers are still charging in their cradles, and the collective blood pressure of the neighborhood is at a manageable simmer. I decided to wash the car. It was a tactical decision as much as a hygienic one. The Tesla was covered in a fine layer of yellow pollen, the reproductive dust of 1,000 pine trees that seemed to have a personal vendetta against my paint job. But more importantly, washing the car in the driveway was a performance of normalcy. It was my way of signaling to the neighborhood, and specifically to the sentry at 402, that I was unbothered. I was calm. I was a man simply maintaining his property. I hooked up the foam cannon to the pressure washer. I love the foam cannon. There is something deeply therapeutic about covering a 2-ton machine in thick, white suds. It looks like a cloud has landed in your driveway. I was in the zone. I had my earbuds in, listening to a podcast about the collapse of the Bronze Age civilizations, which felt increasingly relatable given my current living situation, and I was scrubbing the rear quarter panel with a microfiber mitt. I didn't hear the siren. I didn't hear the tires crunching on the asphalt. I only noticed the presence of law enforcement when a shadow fell over my bucket. I looked up, expecting a cloud. Instead, I saw a uniform. I pulled an earbud out. "Officer?" Standing in my driveway, looking like he would rather be literally anywhere else on planet Earth, was Officer Miller. I recognized him immediately. He was the same cop who had responded to the toxic chemical fire, aka my brisket, last year. He looked older now. We all did. The Brenda wars aged you in dog years. "Morning, Mike," Miller said. He adjusted his utility belt. He looked at the soapy car. He looked at the foam cannon. He looked at me, standing there in wet shorts holding a sponge. "Morning, Officer Miller," I said, squeezing the sponge. Soapy water dripped onto the pavement. "Is it illegal to wash a car before noon now? Did the bylaws change while I was sleeping?" Miller sighed. It was a long, rattling sigh that seemed to originate from the soles of his boots. "No, Mike. The car wash is legal. Looking good, by the way. Ceramic coating?" "Yeah, applied it last fall." "Nice, water beads right off." He paused, looking uncomfortable. "So, listen, we got a call." "Let me guess," I said, pointing the sponge across the street like a gavel. The blinds at 402 were open. Standing in the window, phone pressed to her ear, was Brenda. She wasn't hiding today. She was directing traffic. She saw me point and immediately gestured frantically to the officer, mouthing words that looked like, "Arrest him." Miller pulled a small notepad out of his pocket. He flipped it open. Dispatch received a call at 9:14 hours reporting a disturbance of the peace, menacing behavior, and, let me get this right, testing of an unauthorized sonic device. I stared at Miller. "A sonic device?" "She claims you are in your driveway tuning a weapon," Miller read, fighting a smile. "She says she heard mechanical whirring, grinding noises, and a high-pitched frequency that made her dog vomit. "I opened the trunk, Miller," I said deadpan. "The trunk?" "The trunk," I repeated. "It's a power liftgate. When you press the button, a little electric motor goes whir and the trunk opens. I needed to get my drying towels." Miller looked at the car. He looked at the trunk. "And that's the sonic weapon." "Unless you count the pressure washer, which is arguably a hydro weapon, yes." "I hate my job sometimes," Miller muttered. He clicked his pen. "All right. Protocol says I have to investigate the complaint. Do you mind opening the trunk for me? I need to verify that it doesn't contain a—" What did she say? "A frequency generator aimed at her living room." "Be my guest." I walked over to the car. I pressed the button under the lip of the trunk. Whir, click. The trunk lid rose smoothly. It made a sound roughly equivalent to a quiet electric can opener. Miller stood there, listening. He leaned in. He looked inside the trunk. He saw a stack of microfiber towels and a bottle of tire shine. "That's it?" Miller asked. "That's it!" "Officer!" The shriek came from behind us. We both turned. Brenda was marching across the street. She had escalated. Usually she stayed on her porch, shouting from the safety of her fortress. But today, Tonbon, with the authority of the law present, she felt emboldened. She crossed the double yellow line. She stepped onto my driveway. She invaded the perimeter. "You hear it, don't you?" Brenda yelled, pointing a trembling finger at the open trunk. "That high-pitched whine. It's intermittent now because he knows you're here. He turned it down." "Ma'am," Miller said, stepping between Brenda and me. "Please stay back. I've inspected the vehicle. It's a trunk motor. It's a standard feature on most modern SUVs." "It is not standard," Brenda argued, her face flushing that signature shade of indignant maroon. "He modified it. Last Tuesday he tried to run me over with the reverse sound, and now he's weaponizing the trunk. He's trying to drive me out of the neighborhood with infrasound." "Infrasound?" I asked. "Brenda, do you even know what infrasound is?" "Don't you gaslight me, Michael." She turned to Miller. "Officer, you have to arrest him. Menacing, harassment, stalking via noise. I looked up the statutes. He is intentionally inflicting distress." Miller held up a hand. His patience was visibly thinning. "Ma'am, I cannot arrest a man for opening his trunk to get a towel. There is no crime here. There is no noise violation. The ambient noise of the wind is louder than his car." "He's doing it when you're not looking," Brenda insisted. She stomped her foot. "He waits. He waits until I'm in the garden, and then zap! He hits me with the noise. It's psychological torture." I looked at Miller. "Officer, would you like to hear the reverse sound? The one she claims is a death ray?" Miller looked at me. He hesitated. "But, is it actually loud?" "It's stock," I said. "It sounds like a choir of confused robots humming a C major chord." "Let's hear it," Miller said. "For the report, so I can write, 'Officer observed noise and found it to be non-threatening.'" "No!" Brenda shouted. "Don't let him do it. It triggers my vertigo." "Ma'am, step back to the sidewalk," Miller ordered, his voice dropping into that command presence tone cops use when they're done being nice. Brenda scowled, but retreated to the edge of the driveway, clutching her cardigan like a shield. I got into the driver's seat. I was wet, soapy, and annoyed, but I needed to prove a point. I closed the door. The silence of the cabin wrapped around me. I pressed the brake. I shifted into reverse. Woo! The sound emanated from the front bumper. I rolled down the window to hear the reaction. It was a gentle, undulating hum, a harmless, safety-compliant warble. Miller stood there, head cocked to the side. He looked at the bumper. He looked at the sidewalk. "That's it," Miller called out. "That's it," I confirmed. Brenda, however, was acting as if I had just dropped a flashbang grenade. She cringed. She covered her ears with her hands. She grimaced, baring her teeth as if in physical pain. "See!" she screamed. "See? It's piercing. It goes right through you." Miller walked over to her. He lowered his hands. "Ma'am, with all due respect, that is a Prius compared to my radio. My belt squeaking is louder than that car." "You're deafened by your job," Brenda accused. "You have industrial deafness. You can't hear the frequencies I hear. I have superior hearing." "Ma'am," Miller said, his voice hard now. "I am going to close this call. There is no violation. There is no menacing. There is a man washing his car." "You're refusing to do your duty," Brenda spat. "I pay your salary. I want his car impounded. I want that sound device stripped out." "If I strip out the sound device, the car becomes illegal to drive under federal safety laws," Miller explained, his jaw tight. "He is literally complying with the law by having that sound." "Then the law is wrong, and he is wrong, and you are useless." Brenda turned on her heel and stormed back toward her house. She stopped at the edge of the road, turned back, and yelled, "This isn't over, Mike. The HOA board meets again next month, and I'm calling the city zoning office about your pressure washer drainage." She marched into her house and slammed the door. Whoa, Miller stood in the driveway for a moment, watching 402. He shook his head slowly. He looked like a man who needed a donut and a 3-day nap. He walked back toward me. I got out of the car. "Sorry about that, Miller," I said genuinely. "She's spirited." "She's a nuisance caller is what she is," Miller grumbled. He tucked his notepad away. "We have real work to do, you know? Accidents, robberies, actual crimes. Instead, I'm here adjudicating the volume of a trunk hinge." "I appreciate you coming out, anyway." Miller looked at my Tesla. He walked around to the front bumper. He tapped the plastic where the speaker was hidden. "You know," Miller said, looking at the car thoughtfully, "I get why she hates it. Not because it's loud, but because it's weird. It's that sci-fi hum. You're a hum. It's just distinct enough to be annoying if you're looking for a reason to be annoyed." "Tell me about it, but I can't turn it off." "I know," Miller said. He walked toward his cruiser, then stopped. He turned back to me, a mischievous glint in his tired eyes. "You know, Mike," he said, one hand on his car door, "if it were actually loud, I'd get it. If you had, I don't know, rigged up a train horn or something crazy. Then yeah, I'd have to write you a ticket. I'd have to cite you for disturbing the peace," he laughed, a dry, short chuckle. "But this little hum? It's a joke. Good luck, man. Try not to open your trunk too aggressively." Miller got in his car. He reversed out of the driveway, his Ford Explorer making a loud, mechanical whining noise from its transmission that was objectively louder than my entire car, and drove away. I stood there. The water on the Tesla was starting to dry into spots. I needed to rinse it, but I didn't move. Miller's words were bouncing around in my skull like a ping-pong ball in a dryer. "If you had rigged up a train horn..." He said it as a joke. He said it as an example of an extreme, an absurdity. But was it? I looked at the closed blinds of 402. Brenda wanted distinct. Gary, the HOA president, had begged me to change the sound. The law required the car to make a noise. The law did not specify that the noise had to be a hum. And the police officer had just implied that unless it was a literal train horn, he considered it a waste of his time. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a man who has just realized that the rules of the game are flexible if you are willing to break the board. I didn't finish washing the car. I left the soap drying on the panels. I didn't care about the water spots anymore. I walked into the house, dripping wet, and went straight to my office. I sat down at my computer. I cracked my knuckles. I typed into the search bar, "Tesla boombox custom sounds." The results flooded in. People making their cars sound like ice cream trucks. People making them sound like spaceships. People making them sound like farts. Amateur hour. All of it. I needed volume. I needed fidelity. I needed hardware. I refined my search. Automotive PA systems, external amplification, train horn sound files lossless. I spent the next 3 hours going down a rabbit hole of car audio forums. I learned about the boombox feature's limitations. The car's internal speaker was a cheap, plastic 25-watt toy. It would never be loud enough to command respect, as Brenda had put it. If I wanted to do this, I needed to bypass the internal system. I needed an external amplifier. I needed a marine-grade speaker capable of handling high wattage without blowing out. I needed a trigger system that tied into the reverse lights. I needed an expert. I pulled up Google Maps. I searched for custom car audio. Most of the results were big box stores, Best Buy, car toys. No, they wouldn't touch this. This was liability. This was voiding the warranty. This was chaos. Then, I saw it. A listing on the edge of town, in an industrial park near the airport. Bass and Hertz. Reviews, 4.8 stars. Top review? Dave is a wizard. He made my Subaru shake the fillings out of my teeth. If you want loud, go to Dave. I grabbed my phone. I dialed the number. It rang 4 times. Then, a voice answered. It sounded like gravel tumbling in a dryer. Bass and Hertz, we're open. Hi, I said, my voice steady. My name is Mike. I have a Tesla Model Y, and I have a unique project. We don't do subwoofers in Teslas usually, the voice grunted. Battery drain issues. I don't want subwoofers, I said. I want to upgrade the pedestrian warning system. There was a pause on the line. The beeper? I want to replace the beeper, I said, leaning back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. I want to replace it with something that sounds like the wrath of God. I have a neighbor who claims she can't hear my car. I want to ensure she never has that problem again. Another pause. Longer this time. Then, I heard a sound I didn't expect. A chuckle. Wrath of God, huh? The guy asked. You looking for volume or projection? Both. I want to simulate a freight train collision in a residential driveway. I'm listening, the voice said. When can you bring it in? I'm on my way, I said. I hung up the phone. I looked out the window one last time. Brenda was back on her porch, inspecting her hanging baskets. She looked peaceful. She looked smug. She thought she had won the morning skirmish. She thought the police visit was a warning to me. She had no idea. The police visit wasn't a warning. It was a brainstorming session. I grabbed my keys. I walked out to the soapy, half-washed car. I got in. Sorry, Brenda, I whispered as I backed out. The quiet womb mocking me for the last time. Threatened. You wanted a recognizable vehicle noise? You're going to get the most recognizable vehicle noise in American history. I drove towards the highway. I was going to see a man named Dave, and we were going to build a monster. I drove out of Maple Ridge Estates, leaving behind the manicured lawns and the watchful eyes of Brenda, and headed toward the one part of town where HOAs hold no power. The Industrial District. You know the area. It's the part of the city map that developers forgot to color in. It's a landscape of corrugated steel warehouses, chain-link fences topped with razor wire that may or may not be decorative, and parking lots paved with more pothole than asphalt. It's where you go to buy wholesale plumbing supplies, questionable fireworks, or in my case, acoustic revenge. I followed the GPS to an address near the airport flight path. The sign above the door was barely legible, faded by years of sun and exhaust fumes. Bass and Hertz. Custom audio and security. The building itself was vibrating. I don't mean figuratively. As I pulled my silent, sleek electric SUV into the parking lot, I could feel the bass coming from inside the shop, thumping against my chest cavity. It was a rhythmic, deep-frequency pounding that rattled my rearview mirror. Thump, thump, thump. It sounded like a dinosaur was trying to kick its way out of the building. I parked next to a Honda Civic that had been lowered so much it was practically scraping the earth's mantle. I took a deep breath. This was it. I was crossing the Rubicon. I walked to the front door, which was heavy steel and covered in stickers for brands like Kicker, Rockford Fosgate, and Viper. I pushed it open. The air inside was thick. It smelled of soldering iron smoke, fresh rubber, energy drinks, and that specific metallic tang of expensive electronics. The shop floor was a maze of cardboard boxes, dismantled door panels, and spools of copper wire thick enough to jumpstart a nuclear reactor. Behind a glass counter that was vibrating slightly from the music sat a man. He was the size of a vending machine. He wore a black t-shirt that simply said "louder," and his arms were covered in sleeves of tattoos that looked like circuit board schematics. He had a beard that reached his sternum, and a pair of safety goggles pushed up onto a bald head. He didn't look up as I entered. He was stripping a wire with a level of delicacy that belied his size. Help you? He grunted. His voice was a baritone rumble that competed with the subwoofers in the back. I called earlier, I said, shouting slightly to be heard over the music. About the Tesla. The man stopped stripping the wire. He looked up. His eyes were dark, intelligent, and currently filled with skepticism. He looked at me, polo shirt, khakis, clearly a suburban dad, and then looked out the window at my car. You Mike? I am. And you want to simulate freight train collision? In my driveway, I clarified. Yes. He set the wire strippers down. He reached under the counter and turned a knob. The thumping bass in the back room died down to a manageable hum. I'm Dave, he said, extending a hand that felt like a catcher's mitt. People call me Decibel Dave, but that's mostly for marketing. You serious about this? Dead serious? Dave. Teslas are tricky, Dave said, leaning back in his chair. The chair groaned in protest. The electrical system is a nightmare. 12-volt, 16-volt, high-voltage traction battery. You tap into the wrong wire, you brick the car, or you electrocute yourself. Or both. I figured that's why I needed a professional. Dave cracked a smile. It was a slow expression that revealed a chipped incisor. Most Tesla guys just want me to install LED strip lights or make the door handles glow purple. You're the first one who's walked in here asking for weaponized audio. I have a situation. Situation? Dave raised an eyebrow. Her name is Brenda, I said. Dave nodded slowly, as if I had just named a known hurricane. Ah, a Brenda. Every neighborhood has one. Let me guess. Noise complaint? She says my factory safety sound, the little spaceship hum, is menacing and piercing. She called the cops on me. She's fining me through the HOA. She wants me to change the sound to something distinct and recognizable that commands respect. Dave laughed. It was a loud, barking sound. Commands respect? Buddy, the only thing that commands respect in audio is air displacement. Exactly, I said, leaning on the counter. I want to give her exactly what she asked for. She wants to be warned? I want to warn her. I want to warn her ancestors. Dave stood up. Bring it into the bay. Let's see what we're working with. I drove the Tesla around the back. The bay door rolled up, revealing a workspace that looked like a cross between a mechanic's garage and a mad scientist's laboratory. There were oscilloscopes, voltage meters, and walls lined with speakers of every shape and size. I pulled the car in. Dave walked around it, tapping the panels, inspecting the wheel wells. All right, Dave said, popping the front trunk. Here's the problem. Tesla's boombox feature, the software that lets you play sounds outside, is limited. The internal speaker is a 25-watt toy. It's plastic. It's meant for beeps and boops. Even if you upload a loud file, the car's computer compresses it. It uses a limiter to protect the speaker from blowing out. It's basically a safety nanny. So I can't just use a USB stick? Not if you want what you described, Dave said, shaking his head. If you want a train horn, you need power. You need air movement. The stock speaker can't move enough air. It'll just sound like a train recorded on a cassette tape played inside a tin can. It'll be tinny. It won't have the brown note effect. The what? The visceral impact, Dave corrected quickly. The feeling of sound hitting your chest. So, how do we do it? Dave walked over to a shelf and pulled down a heavy black box. He set it on a workbench. We go analog, Dave said, patting the box. This is a marine-grade PA horn. It's designed for Coast Guard vessels. It's weatherproof, shockproof, and it's meant to be heard over a raging storm at sea. It throws sound directionally. It doesn't just make noise, it projects it. Okay, I said, liking the sound of Coast Guard vessel. But how do we connect it? We ignore the Tesla's infotainment system entirely, Dave explained, his hands moving in the air as he visualized the schematic. We install a separate system, a shadow system. He grabbed a whiteboard marker and started drawing on the wall of the garage. Step 1, we tap into the reverse light circuit. The Tesla sends a 12-volt signal to the taillights when you shift into reverse. We use that signal to trigger a relay. He drew a square. Relay. Step 2, That relay opens a gate from an external power source. We'll tap the 12-volt accessory battery to a dedicated monoblock amplifier. He drew another square, AMP. Step 3. The amp powers this bad boy. He pointed to the marine speaker. We mount the speaker inside the front wheel well, facing outward and slightly down. The wheel well acts as a natural megaphone, amplifying the acoustics against the pavement. And the sound source? I install a solid-state MP3 trigger module, Dave said. It's a little chip. We load one file onto it, just one. When the amp gets power, the chip plays the file. No compression, no software limiter. Just raw, unadulterated signal. So, I said, processing this. When I put the car in reverse, the reverse lights turn on, which trips the relay which fires the amp, which blasts the sound, Dave finished. Instantaneous, zero lag. And because it's a separate system, the car's computer doesn't even know it's happening. No error codes, no warranty voided on the main drive unit. I looked at the diagram. It was beautiful. It was simple. It was malicious. How loud? I asked. Dave grinned. This amp pushes 200 watts RMS. With this horn efficiency, you're looking at about 130 decibels at 1 meter. For context, a jackhammer is 110. A jet takeoff is 140. You'll be right in the permanent hearing damage if exposed for prolonged period sweet spot. Perfect, I said. But I need a kill switch. I can't use this at the grocery store. I need to be able to turn it off and go back to the stock hum. Smart, Dave nodded. I'll install a toggle switch under your dashboard. We'll label it auxiliary lighting or something boring. Flip it off, the relay is cut, and the car acts normal. Flip it on, and you enter the danger zone. Let's do it. Not yet, Dave said. We haven't picked the ammo. The ammo? The sound file, Dave said. Come to the booth. Dave led me into a small, soundproofed room in the corner of the shop. It was lined with acoustic foam. In the center was a computer with 2 massive studio monitor speakers. This is where we audition the noise, Dave said. Syrah, sitting at the keyboard. If we're going to do this, the sound needs to be high fidelity. If it sounds fake, she won't be scared. She'll just be annoyed. We want primal fear. He opened a library of sound effects. Option 1, Dave said. Ocean liner. He clicked the mouse. Bwah. It was deep. It was resonant. It shook the desk. Too slow, I said. It sounds like I'm docking. I need urgency. Agreed, Dave said. Option 2, air raid siren, Carter era. Row. Too political, I said. And people might think we're being nuked. I don't want to cause a panic, just a localized cardiac event. Fair point, Dave said. Option 3, semi-truck air horn. Honk. Too common, I said. It sounds like traffic. Brenda will just think a delivery truck is backing up. She won't fear it. Okay, Dave said. He cracked his knuckles. Let's go to the heavy artillery, industrial rail transport. He typed into the search bar, CSX diesel locomotive. This is a recording of a GE Evolution series locomotive, Dave said, sounding like a sommelier describing a vintage Bordeaux. It has a 5-chime horn. It's designed to cut through fog, rain, and the apathy of drivers at railroad crossings. It is discordant by design to trigger a psychological alert response. He turned the volume knob on the studio monitors up to 11i. Ready? Hit it. Dave clicked the file. CSX_diesel_locomotive_emergency_blast.wav. Honkeblatt. Sound didn't just hit my ears. It hit my solar plexus. It was a chaotic multitonal screech of compressed air and brass. It sounded like 40 tons of steel screaming in agony. Hoa. It was the sound of inevitable momentum. It was the sound of move or die. The acoustic foam on the walls seemed to shudder. My vision vibrated. Dave cut the sound. Silence rushed back into the room, ringing loudly. Whoa, I breathed. It has a nice decay, doesn't it? Dave asked, looking satisfied. I can add a little reverb. Make it sound like it's bouncing off a canyon wall, or a garage door. That's the one, I said. That's the voice of the resistance. I'll add a subtle sub-bass layer to it, Dave mused, already typing. Just a 40 hertz rumble. She won't hear that part, but she'll feel it in her stomach. It induces anxiety. You are an evil genius, Dave. I just know my acoustics, he said modestly. We went back to the bay. Dave started gathering parts. He pulled spool after spool of wire, a heavy-duty relay, the marine horn, Huntran, and the sleek, black amplifier. This is going to take a few hours, Dave said. I have to route the power wire through the firewall, hide the switch, and fabricate a bracket for the horn in the wheel well so it doesn't rattle loose. I'll wait, I said. I want to watch the birth. For the next 3 hours, I watched a master at work. Dave moved with surgical precision. He removed the front bumper of the Tesla with a few deft pops of the clips. He exposed the car's skeleton. He found the stock PWS speaker, a sad, pathetic little puck the size of a donut. He sneered at it. Look at this, he said, holding it up. Paper cone. 5 watts maybe, an insult to audio. He mounted the new horn. It was a beast, a heavy, black, geometric shape that looked like it belonged on a tank. He bolted it to the frame rail, pointing it down and out, angled perfectly to bounce sound off the asphalt and projected outward in a 180-degree fan. He ran the wires. He hid them inside the factory looms, wrapping them in Tesla-branded cloth tape so that if a service tech ever looked, they wouldn't notice anything amiss. It was stealth installation. He crawled under the dashboard. He mounted the kill switch in a tiny, unused cubby near my left knee. It was a simple toggle switch, up for chaos, down for compliance. Finally, he connected the laptop to the trigger module. He uploaded the modified file, Brenda_Buster_final_mix_v3.mp3. All right, Dave said, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. It's done. The car looked exactly the same. The bumper was back on. The frunk was closed. There was no visible evidence that the vehicle was now capable of waking the dead. We need to test it, Dave said. But not in here. If I set this off in the garage, we'll blow the windows out. Where do we go? Behind the warehouse, Dave said. There's an empty lot. It faces the train tracks. Fitting. I got in the driver's seat. Dave got in the passenger side. He had a decibel meter in his hand. I drove around the building to the desolate lot. We were surrounded by weeds and rusted shipping containers. Okay, Dave said. Arm the system. I reached down. I flipped the toggle switch. Click. System armed, I said. I felt a thrill of nervous energy. This was ridiculous. This was petty. This was expensive. And I couldn't wait. Whenever you're ready, Dave said, putting on hearing protection earmuffs. He handed me a pair. Put these on. I slipped the earmuffs over my head. The world went muffled. I put my foot on the brake. I looked at Dave. He gave me a thumbs up. I shifted into reverse. Blah! Even with the earmuffs, I felt it. The car actually vibrated. The floor mats buzzed against my heels. It was instantaneous. There was no ramp-up. It was just immediate, full-volume acoustic violence. A flock of pigeons that had been resting on a nearby roof took flight in a panic, scattering like buckshot. A stray cat bolted from under a dumpster, moving so fast it was a blur. I hit the brake. The sound cut out instantly. The silence that followed was heavy. I took off the earmuffs. My ears were ringing slightly. Dave was looking at the decibel meter. He was grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. What's the score? I asked. 134.2 dB, Dave announced. That is significantly louder than legal. Is it distinct? Oh, the hum. It's distinct, Dave laughed. It sounds like the Norfolk Southern Express is stuck in your fender. Do you think she'll hear it? Mike, Dave said, patting the dashboard. She's going to hear it. Her ancestors are going to hear it. The seismographs at the local university are going to pick it up. I drove us back to the front of the shop. I parked the car. I went to the counter to pay. The bill was substantial. The parts alone were pricey, and Dave's labor, which was clearly expert level, wasn't cheap. I handed over my credit card without hesitating. Worth it, I said as I signed the receipt. Send me a video, Dave said, handing me the keys. Seriously, I need to see the deployment, for my portfolio. You got it, Dave. And remember, Dave warned, his face serious for a moment. Do not use this in traffic. If you hit this button while someone is parallel parking behind you, they will drive through a storefront. This is a stationary deterrent only. Stationary deterrent, I repeated. Got it. I walked out to the car. The sun was setting now, casting long shadows across the industrial park. My Tesla looked innocent. It looked responsible. It looked like the kind of car a guy named Mike who works in UX design would drive. But underneath that midnight silver paint, hidden in the wheel well, was a monster waiting to breathe. I got in. I checked the switch. I flipped it down to compliance mode. I reversed out of the spot. Whoom! The gentle stock spaceship hum returned. It sounded pathetic now. It sounded like a whisper. I smiled. I drove home, the heavy bass of the shop fading behind me. I turned onto the highway, merging into traffic. I thought about Brenda. I thought about her tape measure. I thought about her binders. I thought about the way she had recoiled from the quiet hum, pretending it was agony. She wanted a performance. She wanted drama. Sunday morning was coming, and I was bringing the orchestra. Driving home from the industrial district felt different. The car handled the same. The steering was still crisp. The regenerative braking still grabbed when I lifted off the pedal. But the atmosphere inside the cabin had shifted. Before, I was driving a commuter appliance. Now, I was piloting a Trojan horse. I merged onto the interstate, blending in with the flow of traffic. To the drivers around me, the tired accountant in the Camry, the soccer mom in the Odyssey, I was just another tech guy in a Tesla, probably listening to an audiobook about cryptocurrency or meditation. They had no idea that beneath my front bumper, nestled in the wheel well like a dormant dragon, was a marine-grade acoustic cannon capable of shattering the peace of a tri-county area. I looked down at my knee. There, tucked discreetly into the shadows of the footwell, was the switch, a simple black toggle. Dave had labeled it with a small label maker sticker that just said AUX. Innocuous, boring, perfect. It was currently flipped down. Compliance mode. I exited the highway and turned onto the familiar winding roads leading to Maple Ridge Estates. As the trees grew denser and the houses grew larger, the silence returned. That heavy, curated, suburban silence. I turned into the entrance of the development. The sign, Maple Ridge Estates, a community of excellence, usually made me roll my eyes. Today it felt like the title card of a disaster movie. I rolled down my window. The air smelled of freshly cut grass and arrogance. As I approached my cul-de-sac, I saw him. Gary, the HOA president. He was walking his golden retriever, Buster. Gary looked, as always, like he was carrying the weight of the world on his slumped shoulders. He spotted my car and gave a weak, obligatory wave. I waved back. Don't worry, Gary, I thought. I'm about to solve your email problem. You wanted me to change the sound? You wanted distinct? I'm going to give you distinct. I pulled up to my house. The garage door was closed. I hit the button on the visor. The door rumbled open. And there she was. Brenda. She was standing on her front porch, arms crossed, staring directly at me. It was 6:45 p.m. She was likely tracking my arrival time to see if I violated some obscure commercial vehicle parking statute. I pulled into the driveway. I was careful. I checked the switch 3 times to make sure it was down. I didn't want a premature detonation. I shifted into reverse to back into the garage. Whoom. The stock sound hummed its polite spaceship melody. I watched Brenda in the rearview monitor. She did her usual routine. She flinched. She shook her head. She made a show of rubbing her temples, signaling to the invisible audience that my low-voltage hum was causing her immense physical suffering. Enjoy it while it lasts, Brenda, I thought, a cold grin touching my lips. Savor the hum, because the hum is mercy. I parked. I plugged in the charger. I walked into the house, closing the garage door behind me. I felt like a spy returning from Q Branch with a new gadget. The rest of the evening was an exercise in restraint. I made dinner. Tacos, because even villains need carbohydrates, and sat by the front window, watching the enemy encampment across the street. The lights at 402 were on. I could see shadows moving. Was she drafting a new complaint? Was she researching noise ordinances? I pulled out my phone and opened the HOA app. I checked the community forum. There was a new post from Brenda T., timestamped 4:30 p.m. Subject, noise pollution and safety message. It has come to my attention that some residents, we know who, are using unverified and dangerous frequencies on their vehicles. I have spoken to the police, and while they claim their hands are tied, we as a community can set higher standards. I propose a new bylaw banning all non-combustion engine noises above 20 decibels. Who is with me? There were 0 likes. One comment from a user named SoccerMom88 read, "Brenda, electric cars have to make noise by law. Please stop tagging me in these." I put the phone down. She was relentless. She was like the Terminator, if the Terminator's mission was to enforce beige paint codes. I went to bed early, but sleep was elusive. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling fan. My mind kept replaying the sound I had heard in Dave's shop, that guttural bone-shaking blah! What if it was too loud? What if I actually gave her a heart attack? What if I blew out the windows of my own garage? I rolled over. No, I told myself. She wanted this. She specifically asked for a recognizable vehicle noise. A train is a vehicle. It is very recognizable. I am simply fulfilling the request of the Community Standards Liaison. I drifted into a fitful sleep. I dreamed I was conducting an orchestra, but instead of violins, the musicians were holding air horns, and the audience was just Gary, weeping into a handkerchief. Sunday morning, the day of reckoning. I woke up at 7 a.m. without an alarm. The sun was streaming through the blinds. The sky was a painfully bright blue. It was a beautiful day for malicious compliance. I went through my morning routine with military precision. Coffee, black, no sugar. I needed the bitterness to match my soul. I showered, I shaved, I dressed in comfortable clothes, joggers and a t-shirt. I wanted to be agile. At 7:45 a.m., I took my station at the front window. I pulled the slat of the blind down just an inch. The stage was set. No, the cul-de-sac was empty. The asphalt was black and pristine. A light dew covered the lawns. And then, right on schedule, the antagonist entered stage left. The front door of 402 opened. Brenda stepped out. She was wearing her Sunday gardening uniform, a oversized straw hat that looked like a satellite dish, a floral print tunic that could camouflage her in a botanical garden, and oversized gardening gloves. She carried a basket of tools and a watering can. She marched down her front walk. She stopped at the edge of the driveway, surveying the street. She looked left. She looked right. She looked at my house. She frowned. She didn't like that my house was quiet. She fed on conflict. Silence was starvation. She walked to her flower bed, the one right next to the curb. The hydrangeas. Her pride and joy. She knelt down. Her back was to the street, but she was close, maybe 5 feet from the pavement. It was perfect. I checked my watch. 7:58 a.m. I finished my coffee. I washed the mug. I didn't want to leave a dirty dish. If I was going to be arrested later, I wanted the house to be clean. I walked to the garage door. My hand hovered over the knob. This is it, I thought. The point of no return. I opened the door to the garage. The air was cool and smelled of tire rubber. The Tesla sat there, silent, waiting. I unplugged the charger. I coiled the cable neatly. I walked around the car. I crouched down by the front driver's side wheel. Well, I couldn't see the horn. Dave had hidden it well, but I knew it was there. I could feel its presence. "Don't let me down," I whispered to the fender. I got into the driver's seat. The leather was cool. The screen woke up. The car was ready. I took a deep breath. I reached down to my left knee. My finger found the switch. Click. Up. The system was armed. The relay was hot. The capacitor in the amplifier was charging. I pressed the button on the garage door opener, clipped to the visor. Rumble. 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 The heavy door began to ascend. Sunlight flooded the garage, blinding me for a second. I squinted. As the door cleared my line of sight, I saw her. Brenda had popped her head up like a meerkat at the sound of the garage door. She was looking right at me. She stood up. She dusted off her knees. She grabbed her watering can. She took 2 steps toward the street. She was positioning herself. She was getting ready to be annoyed. She was preparing her face. tightening the muscles into that familiar scowl. I could see it in her eyes. She was waiting for the spaceship. She was waiting for the womb so she could perform her weekly pantomime of agony. I released the parking brake. I rolled down the driver's side window. The morning air rushed in. "Morning, Brenda," I called out. My voice was cheerful, friendly, the voice of a good neighbor. She froze. She looked suspicious. She hadn't expected a greeting. "You're going out early," she shouted back. "Don't rev that thing at me." "I won't rev it, Brenda," I promised. "I just want to make sure I'm safe. You know what you said about the old sound being too quiet? I took your advice." "What?" She leaned forward, cupping a hand to her ear. "I can't hear you. Stop mumbling." "I said," I raised my voice slightly, "I fixed the safety sound. I made it distinct." "It better be," she yelled. "I'm watching you, Mike. One screech and I'm calling Gary." I smiled, a genuine, warm smile. "Gary's going to love this," I said softly. I looked at the dashboard. Battery, 85%. System ready, path clear. I looked at Brenda. She was standing 6 feet from my rear bumper's trajectory. She was staring at the back of the car, waiting for the hum. I placed my foot on the brake. I moved the stalk on the steering column up. Reverse. To understand what happened next, you have to understand the physics of sound waves. Sound is vibration. It is the compression of air molecules moving through space. When a standard car horn honks, it displaces air. It pushes a wave out at maybe 100 to 110 decibels. It's annoying. It's a, "Hey, watch out." A train horn, specifically a Nathan Air Chime K5LA, or its digital equivalent amplified through a marine-grade chaos box, does not just displace air. It assaults it. It compresses the atmosphere so violently that the sound wave becomes a physical wall. At 140 decibels, sound isn't heard, it is felt. It vibrates the fluid in your inner ear. It resonates in your chest cavity. It overrides the logical part of your brain and hotwires the lizard brain, the part that evolved to run away from roaring, saber-toothed tigers. The moment the car registered reverse, the 12-volt signal traveled down the wire Dave had installed. It hit the relay. The relay snapped open, dumping the full load of the accessory battery into the amplifier. The amplifier took the MP3 file, CX6 diesel locomotive emergencyblast.wav, and threw it at the speaker with the force of a sledgehammer hitting a gong. It wasn't a sound. It was an explosion. Blah-hunk! The noise erupted from the wheel well like a physical entity. It slammed into the pavement, bounced up, and expanded outward in a sphere of pure acoustic violence. It was deafening. It was the sound of 1,000 trumpets played by angry giants. It was the sound of a freight train materializing inside a 2-car garage. The effect on Brenda was instantaneous and catastrophic. She didn't just jump. The human body has reflexes, but this bypassed reflexes and went straight to ragdoll physics. One moment she was standing there, smug and expectant. The next moment she was airborne. She shrieked. I saw her mouth open. I saw the veins in her neck pop. But the sound of her scream was completely erased by the horn. It was like whispering during a nuclear test. She threw her hands up in a desperate attempt to defend herself from the invisible train. The watering can flew out of her hand, spinning into the air, spraying water in a beautiful arc. Her straw hat was blown off her head by the sheer pressure of the startle response. She stumbled backward, her feet tangling in the edge of the grass. She flailed, arms windmilling, looking like a cartoon character slipping on a banana peel. She went down. Hard. She landed flat on her back in the middle of her hydrangeas. Crunch. I slammed on the brake. The car stopped. The reverse signal cut. The sound died instantly. The silence that followed was heavier than the noise. It was a vacuum. A ringing. Vibrating emptiness. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, my heart hammering against my ribs. Oh my God, I thought. I killed her. I looked in the side mirror. A hand shot up from the bushes, then a head. Brenda sat up. Her hair was wild. Her glasses were crooked. She had a hydrangea leaf stuck to her forehead. She looked around frantically, her eyes wide, darting left and right, looking for the train. She looked at the empty street. She looked at the sky. She looked at my car. She was hyperventilating. I could see her chest heaving. I put the car in park. I opened the door. I stepped out onto the driveway. I tried to look concerned. I really tried. But the adrenaline was mixing with the sheer, unadulterated satisfaction, creating a cocktail of emotions that made it very hard not to laugh. "Brenda!" I called out, rushing to the end of the driveway. "Are you okay?" She scrambled backward, crab-walking through the mulch, kicking dirt at me. "Stay back," she croaked. Her voice was trembling. "What was that? What was that?" "The safety sound," I said, stopping at the property line. "I had it upgraded. You said you couldn't hear the old one." "That wasn't a sound," she screamed, finding her lung capacity. "That was a bomb! You blew me up!" "It's just a warning, Brenda," I said, pointing to the car. "It's to let you know the vehicle is reversing. Did you hear it this time?" "Hear it?" She struggled to her feet, brushing dirt off her tunic. "I felt it in my teeth. You lunatic! There was a train. Where is the train?" "No train," I said calmly. "Just the Tesla. It's the new high-visibility audio profile." Doors were opening all around the cul-de-sac. Mr. Henderson at 405 came out in his bathrobe, holding a putter. Mrs. Gable at 401 peeked out her window. A dog 3 streets away was barking rhythmically. "What in God's name was that?" Henderson shouted, looking at the sky. "Did a transformer blow?" "It was him!" Brenda shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at me. "He has a sonic cannon. He attacked me. I'm wounded. I'm deaf." "I'm perfectly legal," I shouted to Henderson. "Just backing out of the driveway." "I'm calling the police," Brenda yelled. She fumbled for her phone in her apron pocket. Her hands were shaking so bad she dropped it in the mulch. She scrambled to pick it up. "I'm calling 911. This is terrorism, domestic terrorism." I stood there, leaning against the fender of my car. "Go ahead, Brenda," I said softly, though she couldn't hear me over her own panic. "Call them. Call Miller." I waited. I checked the switch. I flipped it down. Compliance mode. The weapon was holstered. Now came the aftermath.